ago, you had fans back in the arena. Then last night you got to wrestle in front of them. So what was that like, and how big a difference did it make?
Well, I mean, it really did make a big difference. And it's one of those things where, I mean, you forget kind of. I mean, we had been without an audience since March 11th. That was Salt Lake City, which was our last show that had, paid attendance.
Mm-hmm.
And even though we had, employees in the crowd, other wrestlers, that sort of thing, it's not the same. It's not the same as people who have some skin in the game, have bought tickets, who have, got a babysitter or whatever it may be, and they leave their house. So it brings such an energy back to it. And even though it's only 500 or whatever it may be, it makes all the difference in the world. That 500 people sounded like Madison Square Garden last week and last night. So it really does make a difference. Nothing replaces the electricity that you feel in front of a live audience.
And you've got all those people singing Judas for you. And as a heel, when you come out and hear that, do you have to kind of not give the reaction that you're maybe feeling, like the pride of it in your head? Or are you just like, my theme song's so cool?
No, I never subscribed to something like that. As I'm a heel, so I have to discourage this. Everything we do in wrestling is to gain a reaction, whether you're a heel, whether you're a babyface, good guy, bad guy. And the ultimate prize is when you get an organic reaction that you didn't plan for. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened when people started singing Judas. And it started back in January on the cruise, and it was going strong all the way up until, like I said, mid-March. And then we kind of lost that. I had Sammy do it, or different people in the crowd do it, but it's not the same. So when they came back last week, my idea was, let's kick off the show with Jericho's entrance and see what happens. Do people remember? Are they gonna care still? And they sang it so loud, and it was like, what a great kind of flag waving moment to let people know that live audiences are back in AEW by having them, do this very organic sing along. So yeah, you don't want to discourage that. And of course I'm smiling because I'm a heel, but how could you not smile at something like that? It's just such a cool rush. And it's legit. It's the way I really felt, was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for having, crowds back. It made such a difference, and it was awesome.
So your match with Orange Cassidy, when you started this feud with him, at what point did you know it would lead to a Mimosa Mayhem match?
Well, I mean, so I wanted to work with Orange, and I love doing longer stories. So it was probably originally planned maybe for 8 weeks or something along those lines. And the idea was, I'll beat him in the first match and then he'll win the second match. So the Mimosa Mayhem was something that I came up with to be kind of the second match. And then we had been kind of going back and forth with Mike Tyson. And when we found out that wasn't going to work for All Out, I said, well, let's do the second match on TV, and then the third match will be the rubber match, and we can do this Mimosa match on pay-per-view, which to me is much more of a pay-per-view style attraction.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just made perfect sense. I wanted to do a gimmick match, a stipulation match, but what are you going to do? I mean, last man standing, or a ladder match, or a strap match, or whatever. None of that fit the story. So what was kind of the crux of the story that made it kind of stand out was him giving me the orange juice bath to the inner circle, and then us kind of bubbly boarding him in return with the champagne a couple of weeks ago. And that to me was like, okay, well, champagne and orange juice is mimosa. What can we do with this? So I started thinking back to those FMW exploding barbed wire matches where the guy would be teetering on the edge of the ring, and if he falls down into the barbed wire board, it blows up. Yeah. And then combine that with the Royal Rumble, combine that with a coffin match, something where you don't want to leave the ring. Like when you're a little kid, the floor is lava, don't touch the floor. Yeah. So that's kind of where I came up with this. So we can maybe throw each other into, a giant vat of mimosa. Can we do this? So I drew up a really simple design that looked like it was drawn by a 12-year-old, because that's the extent of my artistic abilities. But I sent it to Tony Khan. I said, I got an idea for you. And he said, Mimosa match. I love it. Let's do it. And then put a little pro wrestling twist, Mimosa Mayhem match. Now you got a catchphrase that rolls off the tongue. And so I'm looking forward to it.
Have you had an idea yet that's so outlandish or weird that Tony Khan said no?
A few times, more specifically about his his views on the rules of wrestling. No DQs, no ref bumps. And early on in our relationship, I was always pushing, well, you got to have a DQ or you got to have a ref bump. And he stood strong on that. He does not like that. And to me, we've kind of established that in AEW. You know, we are still working on making sure that our refs don't see all the chicanery that goes on behind the scenes, but we also will not do ref bumps and we will not do DQs. And I think that makes AEW stand out. When you see, you know, Moxley versus MJF, you know it's not going to end with a stupid run-in or, you know, a DQ or a ref bump. You're going to see a legit finish, a legit winner and a legit loser. And I think that's really paying off for AEW and on all the fans who enjoy watching the shows.
So recently there's been a lot of talk about Brock, and I'm not going to ask you, will Brock come to AEW? But if he was to, that would obviously cost a lot of money. So if you were in charge of the purse strings of AEW, would you rather spend money on someone like Brock that's an attraction? Or would you rather put that money into hiring new, like younger stars and developing this AEW talent? What do you think is more worth it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the latter. I think, first of all, it would cost so much money to get Brock to even consider coming to AEW, and Vince would never allow it. You know, if we offered him, you know, $100 million in gold bars delivered in a Brinks truck to his farm in Saskatchewan or whatever, Vince would say, no, I'll give you 150 million. That's probably one of the reasons why, I mean, Brock's obviously very smart. So that could be one of the reasons why he's doing this. I don't think he's a free agent. I just don't think he's under contract right now.
Yeah.
I would rather spend that type of money on developing our roster, which is what we've done from the start. AEW's been all about building stars, and that's everybody. That's Cody Rhodes, that's Nick Jackson, Matt Jackson, Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, the guys that were kind of the top guys when we first started weren't really top guys to the television audience in the States and to the world. And we've now made them top guys. And then our second generation of Sammy Guevara, Orange Cassidy, MJF, Darby Allin, Jungle Boy. I mean, the list of those types of guys is immense if you think about that. And then there's the third tier of guys that we haven't even gotten to yet that will start to build as well. And that's what you have to do with the wrestling companies. You can't base it on, you know, older attractions. If there's one like me, I stand out. If there was 10 of me, suddenly you become, you know, WCW in the 90s where they were just bringing in every WWE guy. And it just dilutes everything. So we are all about building these new characters, these new stars, and pushing younger guys. And that's why I think our women demographic has gone through the roof, because we've got a lot of young, you know, good looking guys. Yeah. That's what I would assume young ladies would want to see. In WWE, if you're 23 years old, they'll send you to NXT for 4 or 5 years. By the time you come out, you're almost 30. It's not the same appeal. So I think that's one of the things we've really focused on that's always been a part of wrestling, but it's been forgotten for a few years, is we have something for everybody on our show, and we're very proud of it.
Well, kind of related, if AEW was out of the equation and you were speaking to a very young, just starting out wrestler, and they told you that they were offered a developmental deal, would you say take it, or would you say do a more of a journeyman indie route, travel the world like you did?
I think you know what my answer is going to be, Stephanie. I mean, obviously that's exactly what I would say, because WWE isn't going anywhere. The developmental system isn't going anywhere. I mean, you said if AEW was out of the question. I think the best thing you can do is travel the world and learn, get experience, not just in the ring learning different styles, but you get that life experience of just knowing who you are as a person and as a performer. When I got to the WWE after 9 years of being in the business, if I had just signed up there, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I would have been gone in months because I wouldn't have known how to handle things. Instead, I knew exactly what to do and knew I can get over anywhere. I just have to stay true to myself and just find out the little intricacies of what I need to do in WWE to get over, like I did in Mexico and Japan and ECW and Smoky Mountain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the best thing you could do, is get that experience and learn as much as you can, and then go to WWE where, like I said, they're always going to be there. And now AEW, and we're not going anywhere either. So I like the idea of experiencing, even if it's just for 2 or 3 years, the world around you before you settle into a big company.
Well, when you went back to Japan in 2020, do you think that is a real like turning point in your career? Do you think you'd be here right now if you had never done that New Japan run?
Yeah, I probably don't think so. I mean, I was in 2015. I just did live events in WWE. I didn't do TV. It was kind of like seeing myself winding down almost.
Yeah.
And then I came back for 3 months in 2016 and started the angle with Kevin Owens and stayed for the next year and a half because it was so much fun. When it stopped being fun, I left WWE and needed a break. Fozzy was really taken off at the time. And then the idea for the Kenny Omega Jericho match came up at the Tokyo Dome. And I was really torn at first. Should I do this? I mean, I always say to myself, I'll never wrestle anywhere other than WWE. It's my home. I love it. But then there's this chance to work with this huge star in Japan who's from the same small Canadian town that I am, from Winnipeg. And the commentator, Don Callis, who set it up, was also from Winnipeg. It just really it just lined up. All the fruit lined up on the machine. And going over there and having the match and just realizing, like, oh my gosh, there's total freedom here, creative freedom. And just seeing what it was like, it really did kind of reestablish my love for the business to where I probably just would have stayed in Japan after that. Then AEW came up, and when it actually was a real thing, then that just kind of changed everything once again. So it was all a big stepping stone to get to AEW. But had I not taken that first step to Japan, I'd probably still be in WWE right now.
Do you feel like you were in the bubble of thinking that WWE's the only way? And do you see with other wrestlers now, like that bubble's been completely burst?
Yeah, I totally was in the bubble. It's hard to leave there. It really is. And the fact that we were able to get, Brody Lee and Dean Malenko and John Moxley and Matt Hardy to leave there, 5 pretty big, valuable names, I think is pretty good. I don't think we're going to get any more for a while because everything changed. The moment I signed the contract, everybody's salary doubled, tripled, whatever. So you really have to want to leave there to the point where you don't care about money. When money comes up, obviously, if you have a family to support, then you got to think about that. But I know we were just talking to somebody very recently that was really thinking about coming to join us, and in the end, took the money and stayed in WWE, and that's fine. But you really have to want to make a stand to leave. And I often equate it to, let's say I told you, okay, Stephanie, I'm going to give you a set of wings. All you have to do is take a step off this, 50-floor building. And you'd be like, I'm so scared. What if it doesn't work? And you take that one step and suddenly you start flying. All it took was that one terrifying moment. But once you did, you're like, this is the greatest thing I've ever done. And it was like that for me. To leave WWE was very hard, but they made it easy because I don't think Vince expected AEW was a real thing. I think he thought I was bluffing when he heard some of the numbers that were offered to me and what it even was at the time. There was no TV deal. It was just kind of like, oh, whatever. How many new wrestling companies start up, throughout the years? It's nothing. When I signed there, it made it legit. And that's when Vince realized, I got to stop this. But by then it was too late.
Now there's a lot of talk like that NXT might move from Wednesdays. Do you think that's best for everyone? And do you think it's a defeat?
Let me ask you a question, and you can answer this any way you see fit. What's the only reason that NXT is on Wednesday nights?
Because Dynamite exists.
Exactly. So if you're doing it to be petty and to try and throw a monkey wrench into what we're doing, it's been 30 weeks and you've lost almost all of them. If you're just being stupid, and Vince is not a stupid businessman. So if you're telling me if we go to Wednesday, we'll go from number 26 in the demo to the top 10 and we'll gain an extra 150,000 viewers, what's the problem? Especially when you're on Wednesdays getting your ass kicked by us every week. At this point, just pull up your tent poles, Game of Thrones, turn around and retreat back into the forest. Retreat to Tuesday nights. It's all yours. You can get as many viewers as you want. That's the way you should do it. Once again, why might that not happen? Because we exist on Wednesday nights. I think it's better for everyone for them to move. Is it a defeat? Of course it is. You guys,
Yeah.
you tried to bully us and you got bullied, and we punched the bully in the face, and now you go back into the classroom. So yeah, we win, you lose. Take your lumps and then move to Tuesday and worry about your own show and build it up properly rather than just worrying about what we're doing.
With you have NWA champion Thunder Rosa on the card this weekend, and it seems like Tony's willing to work with the NWA. Do you think, has there been any movement on him being willing to work with New Japan, especially with Moxley having that US title?
It's kind of the magical question. I don't know. I mean, when you look at who the top guys in Japan were, I mean, the last 3 years in a row, Jericho and Kenny Omega were in the main event or the semi-main event of the Tokyo Dome.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Kenny not this year, but you know what I'm saying. Kenny and Jericho, I mean, that's money making right there. Put us together as a tag team to go face Okada and Ibushi or Okada and Tanahashi or whatever. That's the Tokyo Dome main event. Throw in Moxley, throw in Cody, throw in the Bucks, throw in our guys that would do great in Japan, like Sammy Guevara and Darby Allin and those type of guys. To me, it's a complete no-brainer. Why would you not want to do it? But business is business, and I think there's still some strangeness there. If it's on, I think it's more on New Japan's side than our side. But I would love to do something with New Japan as soon as we can. Even if we had an alliance with them right now, no one can go to Japan anyway, so it's kind of a moot point right now. But yes, I would love for AEW and New Japan to work together, and it's a no-brainer. Half of our guys were big stars there and still are to begin with.
Is there anyone in New Japan that you would like to see in AEW when that is possible?
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, there's a lot of guys that we'd like to see. I mean, I'm a big fan of Will Ospreay, and I tried to recruit him here, but he loves Japan. He loves that style, and he lives there now. I think he would be a top guy. He's a great worker. He's big. He can talk. He's a good-looking guy. I think Kenny really tried to get Ibushi. Same thing. Same reason. But I had a great time in Japan. I wanted to work with Kenny, Naito, Tanahashi, and Okada. I worked with all of them, and Evil as well, which was fun too. I would love to work Ospreay. I would love to work Suzuki. I would love to work Ibushi. So there's still a lot of matches there that I think would be great for me and for both of our companies.
So you've always had a really strong relationship with your fans, and I know, like, when you started, you used to do like sending off signed photographs and stuff, and now, like 30 years on, how has that relationship changed and evolved, and what kind of makes you keep wanting to do things like how you do the Saturday night special and stuff like that for them?
I've always taken advantage of social media and internet and all that sort of thing. I think I was one of the first people that I knew professionally and personally that actually had his own website. And I remember it was 1997. It was called Web TV, which was this, like, it was just a keyboard and you would connect it to your television and it would take forever to boot up. And I remember the first time I got an email from a fan in Yugoslavia. I couldn't believe it. Like, holy shit, you're really in Yugoslavia? This is crazy. So since that time, I've always kind of ridden the wave of the future of social media and really used it to my advantage, realizing as magazines disappear, radio ads disappear, everything is got, you basically promote your own stuff. And if you don't do that, you're really missing out. It's still, to me, I love the fact that like AC/DC or Van Halen have no Twitter page and have no real Instagram page. And it's like, that's great. But if you're not a rock band, from the 70s, you need to promote your stuff. And I've always been a big proponent of that. And I always equate it to when I was a kid. If I, could read what Steve Harris from Iron Maiden was doing during the day and maybe get a retweet or maybe get a reply, I would have thought it was the greatest thing ever. So I always think back to that. And that's why I do a lot of interaction with the fans, with my friends of Jericho, as I like to say. Because to me, I always remember what it's like to be a fan, and I'm still a fan.
Do you not see any like negative on it? Some people will say, if a wrestler tweets something not great, like, oh, I wish I didn't, know like the real them. Or do you think that's kind of better? Because it's an odd one for wrestling with the character and
Yeah.
non-character
I mean,
thing.
it's kind of a interesting dichotomy. But I think people at this point know that we're playing characters. So, you know, if Brad Pitt tweets something about Brad Pitt and I've just seen, you know, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and I'm confused as to why isn't that Cliff the Stuntman? It's like, you know, he's the guy behind Cliff the Stuntman. And I think, you know, this isn't the 80s where everything is super like kayfabe, don't say a word. I think now we're much more behind the scenes. So I don't have a problem with that. But two, I also don't have a problem with insulting, you know, stupid fans that want to try and get a jab in at me. I don't argue with people on Twitter, but it's like, if you're on my Twitter page, don't complain about something that I've done or say something really mean. So I think you have to ride both sides of the coin as well. If you're going to be on social media and everyone's going to tell you how great you are, take it with a grain of salt. And if everyone tells you how much of a piece of shit you are, take that with a grain of salt as well. It's just one person's opinion.
I know we were talking a bit before about the female fans, and they might like a lot of the AEW guys, but I think female fans are also a thing they're really drawn to is good storytelling and
Yes.
storytelling that all connects. And with you being wrestling for 30 years, when you set out to do a storyline now, do you think of your character, Chris Jericho, as an entire through line? You know what I mean? From the beginning, can you see that guy in WCW? Do you think about him in 2020? Like, yes, he'd be who you are now.
That's an interesting question. And first of all, I'll say this: I find that women are much more insulted when wrestling does stupid stuff. Their intelligence is much more insulted than guys. Guys are like, well, it's just kind of wrestling. Girls are like, this is stupid. That's why if you tell great stories, I find that's why probably our women demographic is so high. Yes, we have younger guys but I think, like you said, we don't insult your intelligence. We tell complete stories with beginning, middle, and end, and you have to follow along. There's nothing that I do that doesn't reappear or keep reappearing. I used a pair of car keys for 7 months from Moxley stealing my car back in December. We still bring that up from time to time. You know, so I you know, orange juice gets poured in a jacket. I don't ignore it. I wear a white jacket on purpose and make it oranger every week for the next month or 2 months to make people remember what happened in the first place to start this whole feud. So, what is Chris Jericho in 2020? How's that related to 90s Jericho, whatever? It's all related because it's me. And I think I equate a lot of things to everything to music. And if you take a rock band that's had a long career, we mentioned Iron Maiden earlier, or the Rolling Stones, or a band that's never stopped putting out albums and touring, there's always you know, an involvement. Some of it is good, some of it is bad, but that's part of having a long career. And here I am at 30 years, you know, a month away from 30 years. And there's been highs and lows, but it's always been constant reinvention. It's always been challenging myself and also realizing very early on, you can't just be a nostalgia act, because if you only have one shade, it gets boring very quickly. I constantly have to evolve. And there's still people go, you should bring Y2J back. A, I can't legally. B, I would never do that. That was 20 years ago now. You know, I wish you'd bring back the list. I think that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to go back to WWE, because I knew that I would have to do the list. It does not feel right. The list to me is a great moment in time, but it should never happen again. And what did I do when the list was done? Well, then we stumbled on to, you know, a little bit of the Bubbly and Le Champion and Demo God. These are new hit singles, so to speak, that you can add to your body of work. And it shows, like I said, you stay creative, continue to evolve, and people always look back at their favorite parts. They won't remember the parts they don't remember, but overall the impression is, wow, Jericho has always been entertaining for 30 years. He's always changing and giving us something new and different that we can sink our teeth into, that all of these bands that I mentioned have over the last decades as well.
Throughout your career, you've never been afraid to do comedy. Have you ever had a problem drawing the line with that from where it comes to comedy and things get serious?
Well, I mean, comedy doesn't really draw money. I mean, you have to be entertaining and you have to be funny at times. But if you're like a comedy guy, so to speak, that only goes so far. And you can tell as many jokes as you want outside the ring, but when you get into the ring, you better show a different side of yourself. So to me, comedy is a very important part of wrestling. I always incorporate it into everything I do, but I also think that you need to be vicious and serious and real when the time comes for that as well. If you were in a UFC fight or a bar fight, you wouldn't put out a whoopee cushion and have someone sit on it to make a fart noise. I mean, that doesn't fit. So you shouldn't do that in wrestling either.
So to go back to Orange Cassidy, when you started the feud together, did he have any problem with the kind of things that you were going to draw out of him, such as making him talk and stuff like that we hadn't seen before? Was he ready for that?
I think he was ready, and he's shown that he was. I mean, he had never said a word ever. And that's why I came up with the idea of let's do a debate. What an asshole thing for Jericho to do is have a debate with a guy who doesn't talk, but then suddenly he talks and out talks Jericho, and that's kind of where that idea came from. So when I saw Orange Cassidy and saw how over he was organically by doing something new, doing something different, which is what getting over is. You have to do something that no one's ever done, and he did that, and I could hear the reactions of the crowd and realize like he's got something special. And we need him to be a bigger star here and not just the novelty act, not just the comedy act. He needs to show some different sides, his viciousness, his mean streak. He can outsmart the bad guys. He can talk. He doesn't have to do it all the time. Now people have seen that side of him, and now they know he's capable of it. And that makes him into a much bigger star and a much bigger draw for us in AEW. And that's what we needed him to do. So this was a mission for me, it was a mission to get him over to a different level and to really cement him as a top guy for us. And believe it or not, it's been 14 weeks of us working together. And I think we've more than accomplished it. We just have to continue building upon that.
Cool. Last question then. Before you did the Stadium Stampede, you really sold that as being, you thought it was one of the best matches of your career.
Yes.
Going into the Mimosa Mayhem is something completely different. Where do you think that's going to stack up? And for people that are maybe a bit skeptical, well, what's the reason to tune in for it, other than to see someone get in a bout of mimosa?
Well, I mean, anybody that's skeptical of it is, in my opinion, very short-sighted and kind of stupid because you've never even seen it before. There's nobody in the business that's been in as many first matches than me. First Money in the Bank, first Elimination Chamber, first Ambrose Asylum, first Stadium Stampede, first Mimosa Mayhem. So give me some fucking credit. You know what I mean? If you think I would come up with an idea that I didn't think was going to be great, why would I ever do that? I don't come up with ideas to be mediocre or come up with ideas to be bad. Now, we haven't seen the match yet. We haven't even thought of the match yet. We're still putting it together. But in my opinion, wrestling is all about drama. What's the best part of a ladder match? It's not when the person takes the briefcase down or the belt down. It's climbing, the tension, the suspense. Same with a cage match, all of these things. Same with the Royal Rumble. Guy gets thrown over the top rope, holds on, legs are dangling on the floor, pulls himself up. That's exactly what we're going to do with the Mimosa Mayhem, the drama of what's going to happen. It's still pinfall or submission, but also, too, you can lose by getting thrown into this vat of mimosa, which makes perfect sense with the story we've told. It's not like I just made this up out of nowhere. So if you follow the 14-week progression of Orange and Jericho, this is the perfect way to end it. It's the perfect way to end it. It's going to be a lot of fun. And it's like going to see, someone at a dunk tank, if you guys have those in England. You go to the school festival and you throw a ball to get Professor Schwartz to go into the drink. People like that. And I think if we put a great amount of suspense and false finishes and drama in there, I don't see how it can't work. And also on top of that, it's something that's never been seen before. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And like I said, it's the perfect ending to this great story that we've told.